we are saying that this is the experience that we're having as candidates, as job seekers, we're kind of tying it back to hustle culture. And it's like where you're not applying hard enough. That's something that has actually been said to me and many others many times over. We're not trying hard enough. A lot of people are getting where it's like they've gotten to the point where it's like, well, what do I do? We've done everything.
Right?
We've
Like,
done the
you
networking. We've asked the questions. We've posted the statuses. We've posted the videos. We have every copy and draft and version of our resume still saved in our folders. We have different resumes for different things. We tell people to pivot, and it's like, we'll go to a different industry. And what's missing in all of this is that, yeah, I can do all of those things. I can start my own thing. I can try and get in with somebody else. Those opportunities still have to say yes.
Welcome back to Control Your Career, the podcast that helps you navigate the workplace with more confidence and make intentional career decisions. I'm Julia Toothacre, your strategic career consultant, and I'm so glad that you're here. Today's guest is someone that you have heard from before. Francis Tank Rhodes has spent years working in recruiting and HR systems, and for the past 3 years, he has also experienced the hiring process from the other side as a job seeker, giving him a very unique perspective, if you recall from our other episode. In this conversation, we are going to catch up on his job search because, yes, he is still in the job search a year later. We're going to talk about what has changed since we last spoke. We're going to take a closer look at why hiring feels so complicated today. And we're going to discuss some assumptions that professionals make about the hiring process, where they come from, and what is actually true, not true, or opinion about those topics. So let's just jump right into
Let's get to it. I got my famous mason jar of iced coffee here.
Yes, that's what I need for this conversation. Coffee.
It's amazing the things that people are like. They're like, oh, this is your like signature thing. And I'm like, I'm telling people how to try and survive. And you like my iced coffee, but that's cool.
You have to have those things though that calm you down, that are comfort.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have that. If you don't have that, you're gonna go bananas crazy, I believe. I
liken it to I think it's in Inception. They explain the purpose of having a totem, so they realize when they are like in reality because it's supposed to behave a certain way. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, that's kind of my thing.
I love that. I always laugh when I see your videos on TikTok and I hear the clink of the ice, and I'm like, okay, I need to sit down and prepare myself for what is about to be said.
I promise it's just iced coffee. I promise.
That's good. Okay, so let's do some catch up. It's been a year, and I'm going to link your other conversation, the other podcast episode in the blog post for this, so that if you want to have that perspective, you can, because we're not going to go into everything that we talked about there, which is like your background and some other topics and stuff. But where are you at? What has happened in the last year or so?
Ooh. We'll start with some things on the more personal side. There was some things that I needed to kind of get together. For those that did know, I moved to the Midwest earlier last year, and we had to leave some things behind because it didn't all fit in my hatchback, because that's just not real. So I finally managed to have enough support from the community to be able to go home and get my stuff. Now everything is in one place. That was a huge relief. We've made some new friends along the way, that as I've been being more real about kind of what's happening to not just myself, but so many, like there's thousands upon thousands of us having this experience. Mm-hmm. And just being more real about it, understanding the recoil, the repercussions of doing that and doing it anyway. On the professional side, I got to tell you, absolutely nothing. Like many, the even the responses, even for like rejections, don't even show up anymore.
Crazy.
We haven't been on an interview in maybe 6 months. I couldn't tell you the last one I had before that, to be completely honest. And again, I'm one of a bunch of dots on this chart of increasing numbers and unemployment in so many ways and in so many different lives. And we're basically we're doing one day at a time. We're trying to make things make sense one day at a time, while pouring out what we can to make sure that other people who are scared to say what they want to say, scared to ask for help, scared to talk about their mental health and how this is actually impacting them, scared to talk about how they've been treated by others because of this situation. It's one of those things where, well, someone has to do it. And I've been doing it for a while now, even before all of this became what it is. And that's what we've been up to, trying to create and structure what community looks like in this, when when so many of us have very little to give to make it make sense and help each other survive.
Yeah. Thank you for that update, because I know that this is hard. This is a hard season. It's a hard conversation to have. I know that I was hesitant to bring you back on because I was like, I don't want you to think that I'm, trying to highlight this in a I don't know, in a selfish way, I guess. It was more like, oh no, some things have happened in the last month or so that we need to talk about because it impacts your experience, and so many others' experiences. And here's the other side. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, but I want to say it now early in the episode, because I feel like some of you are going to be like, but Julia, you're a career coach. Why are you not helping Tank with his job search? Friends, I have. And that's the wild part about this. So right after our episode, you actually sent me your resume. I don't know if you remember this.
I remember this very vividly.
And I went through and I was like, wait, why don't you have this? Why don't you have this? And I critiqued it based on kind of my perspective and what I know. And you came back and you were like, because I was told to take these things out.
Just like how when I give people advice, there's things that were like, we're going to talk about how things are just trends in every possible way at some point. But like, that's the conversations that were being had. That was how, as a person who has not only been a recruiter, but a hiring manager, these are things that we were trained to look for. So we just went with it. And all those things are on my resume and they're still there. We've even added stuff to it. So like, we got to have a conversation about how many more of us are doing the same thing, because we keep getting told it's our resumes. And in a lot of cases it is, but we've kind of gone too far with it. And now people are like, well, I'm not doing a 400th edit of my resume. This is ridiculous.
Right. I would say it's 50-50 whether or not it's the resume, because I've seen terrible resumes. So but in your case, I felt like you were undercutting your experience and somebody had given you the feedback to do that. And I was like, what? And so I think that's a good example of, it does not matter where you get the feedback from. Everybody is coming with a different lens. And they're going to tell you something different, and as we're doing this interview, I'm also teaching, and I tell my students, hey, I'm giving you my feedback as somebody that has a very broad look at the hiring process. You need to go to specific people in the field that you are interested in and get their opinion, because it might be different than mine.
It could be vastly different, and it could be the one that works, that one piece of the puzzle again that you're just like, oh, that never actually crossed my mind at all.
Exactly. And then on top of the resume stuff, how often am I tagging you in LinkedIn?
So many things. I look at every last one of them. I want you to know that.
And I'm choosy. Like, I don't just tag you in every single HR thing. I literally am like, does this make sense for Tank and his experience? I think he can do it. I think it would apply. And I don't even know how many things I have tagged you in. I've connected you with people even. So when people sit there and they're like, well, what are you doing, Tank, that you've been unemployed? He's doing like, I know that he's
And
doing the things.
it's so many of us, because another thing that I will hopefully touch on is the same few pieces of advice that everyone has been giving without actually having a context of someone's experience. And I think that is a really, really huge, important, like a very important piece of this relationship, is that we have had the conversations. We have had multiple conversations about our experiences. So that way we can be very specific about who we're networking with.
Yeah.
Because saying just a network oversimplify so much of what actually goes into it that it becomes the misinterpretation now of like, all right, well, I did add them and I did message them one time. Okay, cool. But like, this is a relationship. So like, if you slid at somebody's DMs on a romantic level and they didn't hit you back, that's one thing. But if they hit you back, you have to be able to curate something with that.
Right.
And I think a lot of what's going on right now, and I have seen it and it has happened to me, is when someone is doing what they're supposed to do and they're taking the initiative and they're reaching out to as many people that it makes sense to, a lot of people are not helping because there's not an ROI attached to it for them. And we're going to say it, it's predatory.
Yeah.
I think we're to act like the devices that we're having in our pockets and our hands all day long and choosing not to acknowledge perspective is kind of wild to me, because there isn't a universe where we don't know what's happening here.
Yeah.
On a lot of levels. So for it to not become a business opportunity for you, and you have 10 others and you're doing okay, I don't know, people, I don't want to watch people's pockets. It becomes predatory, and people who absolutely cannot afford that, or maybe just don't know what to say even.
Yeah.
There's this kind of air people have about themselves where it's like, well, I am who I am because of the effort I put in. It's like, okay, well, what you supposed to reach back? What happened?
Right.
You're not going to lose anything from this. And whoever you think you are, as far as reputation goes, you're not. So ego, let's put a little bit of our egos aside here and like reach back and help people who are, you see that they're doing the work. And I want to make it clear, Julia is the best, right? Like Julia is not, we're not riding no coattails. We're not looking for no clout here. I have never felt that. So don't DM her talking crazy.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I don't do a lot of job search stuff with my clients anymore. I used to a lot in my early career, and I do more identity work now. And like career management work. And honestly, I made that pivot a number of years ago around the pandemic, like shortly after the pandemic, because I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like,
it's a lot.
It's a lot. And the ebb and flow of the market. And not only that, around that time, and we cannot go off on this tangent, but around that time, we saw the rise of influencer career coaches that are not career coaches, that literally have no experience doing anything. And they were really good at marketing. We talked about this in the last episode that we did. And they took over in terms of the market and visibility of career and all of that, specifically around the job search. And I was like, I'm never going to be that. I'm never going to speak to you like that. I'm never going to give you false promises as a coach. And so I can't be a part of this side of this type of business anymore. And I made a pretty big pivot around that time to just focus more on the identity. Who am I? What am I doing? I'm lost. Like,
how do I relay certain aspects of this when the time comes? Things like that. Because it's super important.
Yeah. And just to go back to the networking thing, because I think we have that in one of our assumptions. But based on what you were saying about reaching out and all of that, here's the thing that frustrates me. And this is specifically a LinkedIn thing that recruiters and hiring managers can do. You can put an auto reply onto LinkedIn. So when somebody sends you a message, you can do an auto reply that simply says, hey, I get too many inbound messages,
Right.
so I'm probably not going to respond to you. Please make sure that you apply for the position, yada, yada, yada. Like, that's the easiest, most simple thing that you could do as a recruiter or hiring manager.
We're going to have a
especially if you're out-
conversation about the lack of understanding of softwares and platforms, because a lot of these buttons are in plain sight and you're not looking.
Yes.
We're going to have a conversation.
Okay, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later. Okay, so one of the things that I want to ask you too is, in the last few years that you have been on the job search and all of that, have you seen major shifts either in like your experience with the application process, or like has anything stood out to you?
There's been a few things. One was actually pretty recent where I got a confirmation email, the one you usually get after you submit for a role. And in the second part of the body, it stated that, you know, like a lot of others, that, you know, there's a ton of people coming in. We'll get to you when we get to you. But then it very specifically said, we may not get to you. Like, you may just never hear from us. And in my mind, that's like, oh, so if I don't get the job, you aren't going to even like select all in your archive tab and select a template that
literally
is set
takes
for
10
you.
seconds.
It's there.
10 seconds.
You can. Let's start with the software conversation. Every applicant tracking system I've ever put my hands on, we're going to name them: Lever, Greenhouse, Paylocity, Workday. I've implemented 2 of them. Ashby, that's 5. All of them come with the ability for you to preset not just the email confirmation saying you got someone's information, because that's what we just sent you is our information. You can create templates to auto send or select all and send. You don't have to go one person at a time. Workable, 6. You don't have to go one person at a time. You can select all. If you are as organized as you are trying to be in this thing, and send everybody the same yes or no email at the same time.
Right.
Every last one of them. So ghosting is something I can't accept as a reasonable response to an influx of job applicants. Because also, all of us out here in the job market, we're making your job easy. Easier. I won't say easy. It's easier because people are coming to you.
Right.
I almost
hunting.
wouldn't
Like,
dare
how much
call
are
it
you
recruiting
hunting?
at this point.
Yeah.
So
Like-
that's something that I noticed, where we're starting to see, I've seen this grow slowly, but it's happened to me a number of times in the past, maybe 2 or 3 months, where I've read that confirmation email and it said like, you might just never hear from us. And that's unacceptable. I personally don't care if you don't agree. That's unacceptable.
Yeah.
Segueing into the treatment that I've heard people receive when they do get an interview, where it's very, I don't want to say scripted, but it feels devoid of human energy. It feels devoid of conversation. So much so that people have talked about how recruiters and hiring managers will refuse to turn their camera on. They show up 10, 15, 20 minutes late to a 30, 45-minute interview, if they show up at all. Candidates are being ghosted in person.
That's crazy.
I'm going to say that candidates are being ghosted in person. That is
Crazy.
diabolically unethical.
Yeah.
If you have, humans are humans, things are happening around us. People are experiencing things all the time. You may not have the ability to communicate that something's going on right away, but not communicating that after someone, if they have a job and if that job even helps them pay the bills, on time, if at all. They've taken time off from that job. They've traversed to wherever you are, especially if this is something that requires you to be there in person, especially if it's hands-on. And this is happening in every industry. There's an industry that I've not seen on the internet yet that was like someone had this complaint. This is such an easy thing to manage when you take a step back and it's like, all right, if this was happening to me, I would be pissed about it. There's a point, if this was maybe happening for maybe 6 months, a year, kind of like how the beginning of COVID quarantine specifically was, and so maybe early 2022, we can have some conversations about the empathy that can be shown. But I now know people who've been unemployed since 2021. I've met some of these people online, and they are sharing these experiences with me. And also, we know that discrimination plays a role in a lot of these conversations and these interactions. So to pretend that we can't take a second to say, hey, even just a work thing came up. Can you please do me the favor? Because I do want to talk to you. So there's this lack of just like, there's this lack of humanity that's continued to not just exist, but like slowly grow. And as people are sharing their experiences, they're being told that they're wrong.
Okay. I want to say something, and I have zero research to back this up. But this is more my pattern recognition over the last number of years. Do we think that some of this is because companies let the majority of their HR staff go over the last number of years and either rehired less experienced people at a lower rate or just kept the people that they were not paying as much? And now this is the result because these are earlier career professionals that don't have the experience, that have pressure being put on them to do all of these things and be all these different roles because they're probably understaffed.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely. Before I say everything else that's going to happen in the rest of this episode, because again, the internet is the internet. Every nuance is being considered here. So to side with the hiring powers that be, yes, you maybe were forced to make decisions on a business side because a bigger thing, a bigger client, whatever it was, where that money was trickling down so you could pay people more and have more people, impacted how you were able to do business. To say that people don't understand that at this point is disingenuous. So when we are saying that this is the experience that we're having as candidates, as job seekers, where we're creating degrees of separation, where we're kind of tying it back to hustle culture. And it's like, where you're not applying hard enough. So should I put my first name and my last name in the fields twice and then hit submit? Because I don't know what applying hard is. Like, that's something that has actually been said to me and many others many times over. We're not trying hard enough. And it's like, that's wildly disingenuous. So this is dismissive, very dismissive response that a lot of people are getting, where it's like they've gotten to the point where it's like, well, what do I do? And it's like, I actually don't have the answer anymore.
No, because you've done everything.
We've done everything.
Right?
We've
like,
done the networking. We've asked the questions. We've posted the statuses. We've posted the videos. We have every copy and draft and version of our resume still saved in our folders. We have different resumes for different things. We tell people to pivot, and it's like, we'll go to a different industry. And what's missing in all of this is that, yeah, I can do all of those things. I can start my own thing. I can try and get in with somebody else. Those opportunities still have to say yes.
Yeah.
So if it's not happening in your field and you telling me to come to your field,
then you better have a position.
You better have something for me. And I'm ready right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I want to ask a really hard question, and I did not prompt you for this. Do you think that some of what has been happening with you specifically has to do with your social media?
Yeah.
And just how you talk about hiring and HR and the critical lens that you use with it. Do you think that that's impacted you?
yes, I truly do believe that my social media has played a role. I also think that there's a significant level of both personal and professional unjust, like implicit bias in the fact that there is an expectation of how someone like myself needs to present themselves in order to fit into something, while you have plastered on your company's wall and wiki about how authenticity is something that is valued at your organization. So one of us is lying, and that's not something I do. So let's maybe you should paint over that. Maybe you should edit your wiki. Maybe you need to have a conversation with your executives and your board and whoever else is making up these little phrases that y'all got, and have people using all of the, your Zoom calls and whatever. Maybe you're not being real with yourself. It's not when I originally started kind of saying things about my experience, especially being who I am in HR. And originally it was something that I realized early on, especially at the height of like the D. I'm calling it a trend because it was not used the way it should have been when it became popular in 2020. But when DEI became a large conversation, summer of 2020, I realized how quickly and how frequently I was being approached about my takes on things. And it was seen as such a positive perspective. Oh, we hadn't considered that before. And then there was something very specific that happened. It was a particular virtual conference I was on where someone mentioned the idea of uncomfortable conversations. And I was like, hey, my kind of rebuttal for that is, depending on who you are and what experience you're talking about, this isn't an uncomfortable conversation for the person who is routinely impacted by it, right? The second layer to that for me is, as I started to see the arguments take place for who's going to be responsible for this function, who gets to talk about what, all of those things, I called it right away. I was like, this is not going to go anywhere. This is not going to end well because we've commodified it. And there's a lack of understanding of how interpersonal that development is. And you have to be willing to ask yourselves those questions. And we all have those biases. We all have those things that we're like, we can be the most progressive in thought about it. You're going to get some of it wrong. And the issue is that so many people don't want to be wrong.
Right.
And it's withholding so much growth and opportunity for you to connect with other people, aka networking. So when we talk about the instant switch, even before I lost my job, I started to notice it right away, where there were certain conversations I was starting to be had. And I realized I was going from being considered a pillar, because that wasn't something that I ever wanted to pigeonhole myself into. I think if you want to have an equitable organization, just write it in the rules. That just makes sense to me. It doesn't need to be this separate thing on how you need to treat people. Be a decent person. That's like that's below the bare minimum, actually.
Right.
I started to notice a switch pretty quickly, where I was going from like this thing to that was honest and didn't code switch and still don't, to just being like cannon fodder for a movement that was going to expire in the way that it has, which is also something I'm not going to do. So there's situations where I've had to say no to things because I knew what was going on, as I've had a number of conversations, interactions, research, whatever. So I think there's this huge desire to not want to be excluded from whatever group, whatever thing you have attached to you. And a lot of it is, for sure, is like, I understand, again, nuance. You're trying not to put yourself in a position where you lose your job or you lose your ability to take care of yourself.
Right.
It still takes away from this aspect of community that these same people are saying that they want to build, which really just leads me to ask the question, is community really community if you're still trying to figure out who's going to be the best person to be in charge? Who's making the decisions? There are leaders with an S in community. So you have your specialties, you have your expertise. I just happen to relay mine in a way that is authentic to me. So to go from hey, we really value your opinion and your experience, particularly your experience as you operate who you are, and I ask questions about why we do things a certain way. It's gone as far as me being insulted for asking certain questions, being told that I'm like blatantly like stupid, or I don't understand business, or I'm asking the wrong question, or I'm not experienced enough. I'm in my late 30s. Let's start there. Also, I've been working the majority of my life. Let's add that to it. So there isn't a rational reason for me to change how I present myself, because we're making it a goal to not harm people when we relay this information, these thoughts, these challenging perspectives, even just to understand. And I think, again, it's especially because it's the internet. The internet is the internet. I come from early days Twitter. There's like two things you can say to me that would make me come out myself. You're just gonna get blocked, right? Like, it definitely, I know for sure it's a reason why. But I also think that, again, if you're gonna say you're looking for someone who is authentic, willing to grow, willing to challenge perspectives, willing to learn how to add value while understanding that value that they know they already bring to the table, you are a liar about what you say you represent in your organization. And I think your employees need to know that.
Yeah. I think this also goes into the conversation of what does professionalism mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think when we talk about professionalism, a lot of companies and a lot of hiring managers will say, I want somebody that's authentic. I want somebody that's going to tell the truth. I want somebody to feel comfortable and show up as themselves. No, you don't. No, you absolutely do not. Because I had a similar, but also very different experience when I was working full time, because one, I'm a woman and I don't know why that's scary. I'm a tall woman, which is super scary when you're in person and
y'all need to figure out that bias, because all I hear is y'all just don't like women. That's what
I just cannot. But it's like anytime that I tried to point something out, tell the truth, call somebody out, it was like, I thought I was going to get fired every single time. And I'm like, but isn't this part, it's exactly what you're saying. Isn't this part of the ethos of the company?
Right.
Isn't
that, to me, this says a couple things, and this is very real-time thought that I'm articulating. The first thing I thought about was the younger generation is seeing this, that's entering the workforce for the first time. We now have millions of videos from younger people and those of us addressing younger people in a constructive way, telling them that they are not going to get whatever they were told. And it's not fear mongering. We have numbers that are telling us that, regardless of how skewed they may or may not be in the moment, we don't need to go there. It's not wrong, right? So the early 20-year-olds that are just finishing undergrad or even grad school, because these kids are smart, they're seeing how things are operating at the top a lot sooner. And it's like, well, yeah, and they're saying it just like how I'm saying it. Yes. Well, you said it was this, I did this, and you're telling me it's wrong now. So is your whole company fake? Is the way you lead fake? Is the way you learn how to lead fake? Because we know there's a history, right? A few years ago, it was a trending conversation, especially on HR TikTok, where a lot of us millennials were like, did you receive leadership, like management training when you got promoted or moved into a specific, like, higher level of responsibility? And the majority of us are like, yeah, nah. But then we look back at how on the job training has just been, I'm going to say it, devolved into onboarding. It's like, I'll give you a broad overview of how we want you to think things work around here. But like the rest of this, you're going to figure out on your own, because you've been doing that already. Yeah. And it goes back to the reaching back thing. And we went from not wanting to do it, not wanting to reach back and teach, because there's still this conversation about how managers don't want to be teachers and therapists. It's like, no one asked you to do that. We are expecting you to be a leader. And that does involve showing people things.
Or human.
But a person. Like be a person. Be a person. So okay, like, there's so much of that.
Oh my God. Okay. Okay. Can we talk about Gen Z for a second? And I'm going to sound like a broken record because I feel like I've had many episodes and videos where I've been talking about Gen Z. And it's for this reason, because Gen Z is calling out the BS and the managers and leaders and whoever, sometimes it's coworkers, are getting upset about it. And I'm like, why are you upset at them? One, you did not train them. Nobody is training them. Nobody is mentoring them. They're getting more training in school than they've ever gotten before because the businesses have forced higher education to become something that it was never supposed to be. I've done a video on that. You can go find it. Like, there's all these layers to things, and you're expecting them to come out of college just a full-fledged professional ready to have conversations. And they are ready to have conversations, but they're calling you out on your BS and you don't like it because they're, like stirring the pot. And showing all the issues, and everybody's like, I just want to go do my job.
I just want to do my job.
Fine.
I don't want to. I shouldn't have to do the excess to make sure you're not unhappy with me for like 10 minutes.
Right. They're just calling it out.
I just want you to treat me better. Honestly, that's really all I'm asking you. But if I say it that way, it doesn't sound professional.
Right.
So I got to find another way to do it. A buddy of mine, when my retail life, this is years ago now, we had an interaction with a customer, and belligerent per usual. And we were in kind of like mid high fashion retail. So unfortunately it comes with the territory. And that customer left, and me and my buddy were laughing about it. And he was like, do people not know that like they get talked about when they leave? And that stuck with me for over a decade, where it's like, whatever someone is saying about me when I'm not in a room isn't my business. And if I'm in the room and they're whispering it, it's still not my business unless I hear them. And I can verify that they're talking about me in whatever capacity. But we can't talk about first impressions while leaving a terrible last impression. You are leaving a terrible last impression on these kids. I have younger siblings in each generation, millennial, a Gen Z, and an alpha. I think that's what they call themselves. And I worry about the groups in all three, because the one that's where they're entering the middle millennial, and then the other ones on the elder, like they're all on the older end of their generation too. And I struggle with the idea that they aren't going to make it because we don't know how to be decent in showing people how to do things, and that there has to be, again, an ROI on me showing you something. But with with what you were saying, and why I bring up that specific moment is, and tying it into the internet presence, if you don't want people to talk about you, don't do things that's going to get you talked about. That's really like, that's really it, right? You're so ready to you will take action sooner on a negative review of your negative behavior than you would creating a positive environment where feedback is welcome, and it over time becomes less crass because that person's seeing that you're putting in the effort to make their workday less frustrating.
Right.
It's like the companies, if you buy something, they will take you 2 weeks to get a refund, but they're going to take that money right away second you check out. That's crazy to me.
Right.
If you don't want to get talked about, don't do things that's going to get you talked about.
Okay. I think this actually loops back really well to my question, maybe 5 questions ago, about do you think your social media is part of the reason that you're not going through? Here's the irony to me. Everything that you talk about is true. It's your experience, or it's experiences that people have shared with you, because I know you get a lot of that behind the scenes. Or it's research, it's things that are out there that other people can look at and read, and things that are being talked about, things that are being said with actual citations and all of that. And what's wild to me is if I'm a company looking to hire somebody in the people function
Oh, I know what you want to say.
to be authentic, why wouldn't you want somebody that not only is on top of the research and things that's out there, that has anecdotal information and understanding of how people are feeling, not only in the job search process, but in organizations? Why wouldn't you want that as a company? And then this loops back to you saying you have a set of values that you put on your website and you plaster on your walls and you send to everybody and you have town halls about it and it's so wonderful. But then you're not willing to hire the people that are actually going to help you live those values out and get to where you're saying you want to be as an organization.
Right. And we're going to talk about another thing. It was another question you asked, like, what have I noticed that has maybe changed or gotten better or worse or whatever it is? I have seen less and less ENPSs, internal pulse surveys, get published publicly. So what's going on in y'all people company?
People are mad.
Y'all was so ready to, you put the money into the things that's going to get you the awards. I've been to one of them. I've been to an NO. I got one. They gave me the red jacket and everything. And it's I don't know. That's something that I peeped in the last couple of years. I didn't say anything about it because I'm like, maybe it could just be me. Maybe I'm not seeing, what I used to see because I'm so far removed from whatever. But that's something else that I've noticed, that like companies were so ready to make sure that the world knew that they didn't suck.
Right. They don't care now because the social media is doing it for them. I mean, that's part of the problem is they know that they can't publish any of that information because I'm sure the people that are still there are overworked, underpaid, and frustrated.
And the current conversation is the current conversation is companies used to be embarrassed about laying people off.
Yes.
And I know I can pinpoint exactly when that stopped being a thing. And it was when the Better.com CEO crash out happened.
Yes.
For those who don't remember that, there was a leaked Zoom call from this online, I think it's a real estate company or property management, something to that effect. And they had a layoff. And the next day, their CEO got on the Zoom call and was calling everybody everything but a child of God and telling them that they got to work harder. And then he went through whatever repercussions he dealt with. But it was around then, I think that was 2022 or 2023 when that happened. And layoffs started to grow, just not just in like the number of people, but the speed in which it was happening. That is about when that stopped. The embarrassment stopped, because a lot of us, the people who may have been decision makers, but we weren't the top tier decision makers, we're starting to adapt this idea of like, oh yeah, no, actually, like whoever's left, they do just need to work harder. So that's the attitude we need to have. That's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay. I feel like you answered this question a little bit, but I'm going to pose it specifically. How did we get here?
It's a combination of a lot of things. It's a messy, it's the middle child treatment of like all the things, right? And I can say that having the POV of being the eldest. We can have the conversations about specific things, but I think what I have highlighted as I have been on this journey and listening to other people's stories who are, believe it or not, in significantly worse positions than me. And this is pretty bad. The hustle culture eventually became such a thing even inside the corporate world. I don't think the corporate world like hyper perpetuated it, but it didn't help. It's severely increased the amount of hyper individualism that's taking place right now, where we are having these conversations about lack of community and we started at the beginning where it's like, okay, well, we're missing third space. It's like, all right, cool. We can open up a bunch of coffee shops and little bookstores and, whatever, chill areas, right? But then the conversation hasn't gone deeper yet, which is where a lot of my frustration lies. And what people don't understand about building community, whether it's personal or professional, is that accountability needs to be involved in any version of a conversation, especially the hard ones, where we're trying to solve a problem. And there's a significant group of people who are fully capable of at least pitching in to point so many of us in the right direction. So we get ourselves out of these situations. There's so many of us that are in multiple catch-22s. And there's something, again, like I said, there's something about the desire of or the unwillingness to not help unless there's something coming back to you. While again, still having this conversation about how you crave community, and then introducing karma, like the good karma will come back to me. It's like, well, what did you put out? Right. And I truly think it's one of many pillars, but it's one that we haven't circled back to yet. Sorry, I throw the corporate lingo in there, but it hasn't happened. I saw a video literally about 45 minutes to an hour before we started this, and someone was talking about how the increase in military terminology is starting to show up in corporate spaces. And I had someone text me the other day about a conversation they had where someone used tip of the spear. And I'm like, I've heard Marines say that. None of y'all have. Are we starting to do stolen valor here? Like, what's happening? And again, that's one little piece of this giant puzzle. But I really do think that there's this sense of we have to call it what it is, entitlement, that whether it's earned or not doesn't matter. But I am not going to put you on unless you can prove to me that you're not going to embarrass me, or you can prove to me that you're going to actually do what I say specifically to do. And that all comes back to this very selfish kind of thing that some of us are forced as humans in the environment that we're in right now to have to behave in, because we don't want to put ourselves at risk. But you also solve zero problems that way.
Yeah. I was going to say, people are probably afraid for their jobs right now, just generally. And so then when you add another layer of another human, and you maybe don't know them as well, or whatever the case may be, it's like, I'm not risking anything.
I'm not risking any of that. Why would you? Because again, I get the goblin mask start talking to you, and you're like, well, why someone's going to be annoyed that I sent them someone who speaks about things this way. And it's like, is that the case? Or are you feeling some type of way about yourself and how you run things? Again, like we were saying, you have the values on the wall, but you're not acting like the values that you have on the wall. And you got the early adults being like, hey, my frontal cortex it's not well done yet, but I could read, and your behavior doesn't match what I read.
Yes. Oh, okay. Well, friends, that's how we got here. Okay, I want to go into talking about common assumptions about hiring. And there are some specific topics that got us here, and we're going to get to those topics, but what I wanted to do was have a more general conversation around the things that Tank and I are hearing, on social media from our peers, for me, from clients. So much of this is going on, and we wanted to have this conversation around, okay, is this a true statement?
Right.
Is there, data to back it up?
Right.
All of that. And so I want to start this portion because I think that this conversation is really important for people who are out there applying and they're frustrated and they're hearing certain messages that may or may not be true, or they have their own internal messaging that maybe is fighting against what's going on, whatever the case may be.
Or more context is required.
Yes. context. Look, we love context
We love
around here, friend.
context.
We love context and we love nuance. And I think that that's something that for those of you who are going to listen to our entire conversation, one, bless you, but also like, that's the thing that I think you and I are really good at, especially in podcasts, online, through our messaging, is
Right.
we're going to be real. We're going to be authentic. We are going to give nuance. And unfortunately, a lot of people are struggling with that right now.
Yeah.
And that makes these conversations really hard.
Very.
Because I guarantee we are going to say some things and we are going to cite some things, and you are still going to come back and say, that's not true. You can absolutely have a different experience than what the research says, because the research is a snapshot and usually a generalization of something.
Right.
So you can have your individual experience, and you can even know multiple people that have had a similar experience to you. But that does not mean that it accounts for the majority or the average.
Right.
So we have to think about that coming into this conversation. So I'm going to jump around a little bit because I want to start with the one that I think is going to upset people the most, which is my resume probably got rejected by the ATS. So ATS, for those that don't know, applicant tracking system. Tank, give us a little overview on what an ATS is and does.
At its core, an ATS, or an applicant tracking system, is a digital filing cabinet. That's it. That's all it can do for you. Within said digital filing cabinet, there's a variety of settings based on what a role is looking for, a manager is looking for within that role, I should say. What happens there is there's a bunch of presets where you can have legal disqualifying questions or qualifying questions. You have your ones like, hey, you have the right paperwork so we don't get in trouble for hiring somebody who isn't, on the docket in whatever way, right? Valid question. Next question could be something like, okay, if we're going to get a job at a warehouse and you're forklift certified or not. If you say, yeah, you get an interview, you get that job, and you crash that forklift in the first 10 minutes of you being there, that's a problem. I understand the desperation, but you bypass something that's really important because you've now put everyone, including yourself, in physical danger, mortal danger, right? Yeah. So you have your things. Do you live within a certain vicinity because we want people here, for X amount of time to do an actual hands-on thing? Can I lift a certain amount? Can you get here? Do you have a lot? Those are valid qualifying and disqualifying questions. Those things are programmed to move you away from the process.
Yeah.
Whoever's in that ATS on the back end with admin privileges, you still owe someone a response. That's not an excuse for you to ghost nobody. Don't do that. But that's how that works. The issue that people are running into now is the added layers of technological supports that are showing up in these systems. And there's a misunderstanding that the company that is hiring is also responsible for the applicant tracking system and what goes in it. The company paid for that system. That system is its own organization. Like, I don't know a company to name. Lola is not Greenhouse. Lola bought Greenhouse.
Right.
So I think there's that there because people, you go to your career site and you're like, okay, like, it's on the career page. So like they've obviously done something wrong. It's like, well, no, they just paid for a bunch of features that will hopefully help them do their jobs a little bit better, smoother, whatever it is. On the other side of that, all of my admins, still the same answer. It's a filing cabinet, but you have so much control on how people get treated within that filing cabinet because it's not just data. You're talking about a person on the other end of this thing that thought you cool enough to want to be on your team. And we've lost our way there. But that's all that is. And now when we go another layer down and you do want to talk about things like artificial intelligence being involved in these processes in whatever way that they are, we can definitely have an argument on how helpful or not it is, because there's still so much of it that is left to be explored. And there is an over reliance on it in a number of ways. And this thing is putting out wrong information. It is storing things wrong. It is sorting things wrong. It is misreading people because it's not a person, right?
It doesn't have nuance.
It doesn't have nuance. It just sees a bunch of words on my thing in whatever way it works. Because I think that's the other thing too, is like I have a large beef with the way AI is being used, specifically in hiring. But on the basis, just to make sure we have an understanding, is that all of these things are programmed to work very differently between all of these softwares, between all of these companies. And companies, the organization that is purchasing this applicant tracking system, in whatever capacity, when they talk to their implementation specialists, whatever, are able to select how much of this within reason they want involved in their process, and are hopefully learning how to use it just to know how to use it.
Through my own experiences and following other recruiters and having whole seasons dedicated to having recruiters on saying the same thing that Tank just said, people still fight against this.
Yeah.
So what I found in relation to this is actually a blog. It's called Hunter Blog.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the main site that this was on. And it's an article called How Applicant Tracking Systems Work in 2026. And I'm not going to go into all the data components, but I am going to link this into the blog post for this episode, because if you are doubting anything that Tank just said or anything that I'm about to say, you need to go look at this article, because the level of research that they did and what they looked at was intensive.
It's very in-depth.
Very in-depth with charts and screenshots and all sorts of lovely things. And it breaks down all the major ATS. So for all of you haters, you can read this blog. I will link it. Here's what I want to share with you, which are the key findings of this. The number one finding: no major ATS auto rejects resumes without human review. So if you apply and you get a rejection immediately, it means that you answered one of the knockout questions that Tank was just talking about in a way that they did not want. Do we know which one? No, because they're all different.
They're all different.
I don't know. I think this is a little side thing. I think one of the biggest issues right now with AI and hiring and all of that is if you are making a career change, you are screwed, for lack of a better word, because AI is going word for word. It doesn't understand nuance and it does not understand context.
Right.
And I have been telling clients, I get that you want to make this big old change. I wouldn't right now. You can.
That used to be a conversation where it was a lot of us, in the early days of our coaching, where we were working more, on the operational aspect of it, the strategy and how to go about making a change. I got asked a lot how I left retail and got into HR. I still get asked, and I'm like, I have an in-depth answer, but I think the one you want is I just got lucky. And it's no, we put actual effort into this. This was a decision, which we can argue how crazy that was or not. But
it was also a different time.
It was a very different time. That was almost 9 years ago.
Yeah, that's totally different.
Very different.
Totally different. And so I think that's so again, nuance and context in there. If you're giving examples from 7+ years ago, it does not apply to today.
Your info was outdated.
It's outdated just because of everything that has happened. So one of the other things that's in this report, and I'm not going to go into all the details with it because we'd be here forever, but it talks about each of these platforms and how AI is used within it.
Right.
And a lot of it is they will give candidates a score, or they will rank, or they'll give a justification they have this, this amount of candidates have this specific experience. Something like that is how they're using AI. So a recruiter can go in and just look at the top if they want to.
Mhm.
And that's probably, I would say, like the lack of training and lack of experience of, an earlier professional or a new professional in the field to not look at everything. But I think that this is some of the nuance that people need to understand. Yes, there are AI components, but what you think it's doing is not exactly what it's doing.
Right. And that's not to say there isn't something not okay happening.
Right.
Just so we all, again, don't jump in her DMs, but if you slide in my DMs, you might get a response. You're not going to like it. But that's not to say this thing or this, and I don't want to say it's behaving, but that's not to say there aren't negative aspects of this. There's just a lot of this that is not being fully given to you in the context it needs to be given. So your anger and frustration is more justified than not because you have a nuanced understanding. And it's justified, but you don't want it to be this herd mentality of justification where it's just like, I knew it was a thing, but you have no idea why. Right.
And again, I'm going to say it again. It doesn't auto reject. I feel like we're going to have to say this over and over again because people still say it auto reject. It didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't. So I think also what people are seeing is, I applied and then got a rejection at like 3 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think y'all are underestimating how many companies have overseas staff that are probably combing through the hundreds, if not thousands of applications, and they are rejecting you.
Yeah. And I mean, especially if you're applying to a larger place, again, that's not to say I agree with it. It's not to say something's not wrong in there at all. But not even to go that far, unfortunately, we were talking about earlier how there's understaffed and too much responsibility now on the powers that be. Like, some people are up at 4 a.m. trying to get their life right.
Look, yeah.
I'm not saying it's cool, but I'm not going to say it's not real.
You just don't know. I think that's the thing with this conversation is you don't know what the organization is doing.
Right.
You don't know the staffing situation. You don't know their processes. Okay, yes, we stopped this episode in the middle because as we were recording, Take and I went into 2.5 hours of content, and we know that nobody wants to sit through that. And what I would love for you to do is make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast so that you know when the next episode is going to happen. Thank you so much for joining us for this particular part of the conversation. You're going to get all the rest of it, which is going to be really good, let me tell you. So please follow along. And for this episode, I'm going to have all of Tank's links and everything. Again, thank you so much for joining me, Tank, and having these conversations. And I know we have so much more in the upcoming episode. But if you do want to connect with him, that will be in the first blog post for this episode. And I appreciate you so much for being here and talking about all of these hard topics. Thank you so much. And thank you to the listeners. Again, this is just the first half. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, you control your career.